Welcome to the LowCarbMD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope.
As we have always said, we are bringing you medical information and cutting-edge science, but none of this is medical advice. Please seek out input from your own doctor.
Hello and welcome back to the Low Carb MD podcast. Troy, you should welcome me back, man. It was a crazy June for me. My wife's birthday, my kid's birthday, I got COVID, I got all kinds of fun stuff. And so
you got
it's good to be back.
Yeah, that, and you got to interview Noakes and Fedke and Malhotra. Oh, I mean, you got some amazing, those are all my heroes, man.
Yeah, anyone, I mean, I don't make any money off the podcast, but Life's Best Medicine, we had my world heroes, besides Tro. I haven't got you on there yet, Tro. No, I did. I want to have you and your wife back on, though. That's what we talked about doing, but, we're all so crazy. But yeah, what an honor. What an honor. I think anyone who wants to hear that, I really like to hear the backstory of what motivates people to keep going when everyone is against you, when you're up against a system, and Malhotra and Fedke and Noakes and all these guys that's really Belinda Fedke, and really just seeing as people what they're doing, like what their support systems like, what who do they reach out to, and some of them had colleagues and friends who just backstabbed them when they changed their tune, and it just shows a lot about their character of saying, oh, I've been saying this for 20 or 50 years. Now I'm wrong. Now I'm going to change what I'm doing. And, all that kind of stuff. So it was really an honor, really. And it was crazy. It all just happened at once. I had all these great people like right in a row, just willing to come on. And so, yeah. So it's good to be back here, though.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I'm excited. We have a returning guest, master's in nutrition. She's a health coach. She is setting up New York City's first Keto Symposium. She's certified in mindful eating and integrative health, and she loves nutrigenomics. She loves tackling emotional eating. We have Kristina Hess back, and besides talking about emotional eating and besides talking about nutrigenomics, we're definitely going to talk about the upcoming Keto Symposium, which is going to be in New York City. And thankfully, they lowered their standards, and I'll be talking there. So
what are you going to talk about, Tro?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm not exactly sure. I think I may tackle food addiction, but I'm not exactly sure.
I think you should.
Either food addiction, cravings, or glycemia, or a combination of all of those. So we'll see.
So you the kid who put off your homework and then crammed at the last minute and then
always. Yeah.
Study for the test the night before.
Well, I got a little bit of time. Kristina, when is the conference? Why don't you tell everybody?
The conference is September 23rd and 24th in Manhattan. We're going to be in a small auditorium that's part of the Lincoln Center campus. So where the Met is, where the ballet is. It's a great location. So
I love the ballet.
Yeah, so people can make a weekend out of it, come to New York City. The fall is a beautiful time of year to come visit and, catch a Broadway show in addition to Keto Symposium and learn from experts like Tro.
No, tell them about the real experts. You have some.
We have some amazing. And so this is a.
Well, did you announce the bombshell yet, or on who's going to be there? Or is that finalized? I don't want
to. The speaker roster is completely full, and everyone's basically only going to be able to do TED Talk lengths because it's so jam packed. But we have new additions are Nina Teicholz. Thank you.
Yeah, Nina Teicholz, my hero, my personal hero. I'm going to tell you, she is like a warrior, and I consider her up there, by the way. You got to get Nina on your podcast.
Yeah, I got to get her on. I'm afraid she intimidates me, so I got to get her on. She's awesome. I like her a lot.
So, and do you know what she's talking about, or?
She's going to be talking about some government, some hidden files.
I can't wait for that. I love that stuff.
So Freedom of Information Act has revealed a lot of things about food, and she's a food activist, so that's going to be very interesting. We're also having a partial film screening about cancer, and that features one of our speakers, Thomas Seyfried, a renowned cancer researcher. So we'll be covering cancer as a topic. I love that you're going to speak about food addiction. No one else is going to do that. We have Cynthia Thurlow talking about fasting. We've got Mindy Pels talking about female, how to do it for women. We've got Dr. Dan Pompa talking about cellular detox and healing the cell. We've got Ben Azadi. We've got Maria Emmerich. We've got Temple Stewart, who's a ketogenic dietitian, talking about PCOS and fertility. We've got Robert Sykes, who's an athlete bodybuilder. So doing that angle for athletes, keto for athletes. I feel like I might be forgetting someone really important.
Maria, is Maria Emmerich's coming? I thought Maria Emmerich is, did I?
She is, yep, she's our keynote on Friday night at the very end of Friday evening. So we'll kick off with a Friday evening reception and cooking demo and then some, Dorian Greenow from Keto Mojo is going to talk. And we've got the film preview and Maria on Friday, and then everyone else is on Saturday.
Man, I'm jealous now, Tro. Sounds really
You gotta
awesome.
come. You could stay in our house, Brian.
Are you doing it online? Is it going to be online too, or is it just attendees?
Just attendees.
All
We
right,
do have a ticket option for people who want to purchase the recordings.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
us
Brian,
West
you should
Coast
come.
people.
You should absolutely come.
I got to be honest. I'm most looking forward to Nina. You know, every time she speaks, there's something.
Oh, I forgot one. I did forget one. So we've got Catherine Arnston, who's the founder of Energy Bits, and she's going to be speaking about algae and the power of spirulina and chlorella on, creating superoxide dismutase in the mitochondria and how, how important it is for mitochondrial health.
Yeah, I already don't know what you're talking about. So,
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, it's so exciting. It's so exciting to see all these different areas. I know Tro saw it too. The Georgia Eid and Westman and a few other people came out with, and talk about depression, anxiety, bipolar, refractory, getting better with like a low carb ketogenic diet. And so it's really fun because stuff that we noticed 2 or 3 years ago, now all of a sudden it's
4 years ago, Brian. You're
4
getting
years ago.
old.
Geez, yeah, time flies, man. 4 years ago we were talking about it. Doctors were attacking us saying you should have your license revoked for even talking about this. So I'm curious to hear from some of those people. I think they all blocked us probably by now, Tro.
Yeah, you may not know, Kristina, but I mean, you certainly know the power of a ketogenic diet on mental health. We saw this, 4 or 5 years ago. I remember I had a couple of patients come to me, and he's like, Doc, my sex drive is way up. I've lost weight. I'm low carb. He goes, but, I'm actually, bonding better with my wife, and I'm not using porn. And, he's like, I was addicted to porn before, and he's like, now I my life is so much better. My mind is so much better. And we heard people saying, alcohol, like, I just don't have the same cravings. Yeah, I like alcohol. I've always had a problem with it, but my cravings have really come down. And certainly we see that with sugar addiction, that food addiction, those symptoms improve. So me and Brian were just shooting the shit online saying, hey, this is what our patients are saying.
And we're speculating what we think. I said, well, maybe their sex drive's better or they feel better about themselves emotionally. So they're having more sex with their partner. They don't need the pornography. Maybe it's a anxiety thing where alcohol or drugs or whatever it is, your escape food.
Together.
And you say, well, maybe that's something to do. And when we were just bantering, trying to figure out like why he's seeing what he's seeing. And then all of a sudden these crazy attacks came from a pediatrician in England or something, right, Tro?
Yeah.
And it was crazy. Like all their followers attacked us and said, you guys are crazy. You think it cures everything. We're like, no, this is just what we're seeing. And I was seeing the same thing. The most amazing, still I say the same thing, is the effect on the mood and stress levels that people have. And
well, I don't see, I mean, okay, I understand how some people don't think that being in a long-term ketosis state is healthy and that we were meant to utilize, glucose, but everyone agrees, I think, across the board that sugar is damaging, like too much sugar and too much starch. It's so prevalent. And then you add on top of it just so much processed food and vegetable oil. It's it's it does affect your brain. It makes people kind of kooky and crazy and angsty and depressed.
And then you throw in life stress, right? And then
Any mother knows this. Take a kid down the cereal aisle, they go crazy, and take them down the yogurt and eggs and meat aisle, and they're just fine, right? So most people, I think, kind of recognize this, like, just, as a person. But the scientific community, and this is 4 or 5 years ago, before the NIH did the studies on alcohol, the effects of ketogenic diets on alcohol, before the studies that really cemented, ketogenics effect on migraines and headache prevention, before, we certainly knew about seizures, but now the data that's coming out on mental health, I mean, it just lines up exactly with what Brian and I have been talking about for 4 years. And they were deplatforming
I have something to show you guys. I have something to show you. Hang on.
All right. We're not deplatformed yet, Brian. They're coming for you, though. I know that.
yeah, they're coming from. They've got me once already, but I try to be.
What are we going?
The last time I was on your podcast, I shared my story about my mother going to the hospital and getting fed, crap food. And the thing is, she was hospitalized again recently, another diverticulitis flare. She was also treated as a cardiac patient because she was having an AFib episode as well. And I have some samples of the food that she was given.
Oh my God.
So for anyone who's not watching and they're just listening, I'm holding up some so-called maple syrup. That the first ingredient is corn syrup and the second ingredient is high fructose corn syrup, and then it's just water, natural and artificial flavors. And you guys want to read the first 5 ingredients that are in.
And you just don't eat that by itself, right? You have to put on something.
And this was served on a pancake that had been just frozen and microwaved, so it was nasty to begin with. Then, she was given a salad with buttermilk ranch dressing, and the first ingredient is soybean oil, and the fourth ingredient is corn syrup. And so and then it has more sugar down the line. So that's crap. Mayonnaise for her sandwich that has soybean oil and sugar as well. Smart Balance butter, which is just disgusting. Sugar in a cup, just nasty sugar and vegetables. So
fake blueberries.
And that's a really great hospital, by the way, in Connecticut, really top of the line, redone multi-million-dollar hospital. So
is that Stanford? Oh,
Stanford Hospital.
What's that?
Come on, we're not gonna pick on the dang name of the hospital. Come on, man.
I'm coming after you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's make change. We can make change. Do you mind if was it Greenwich, Stanford, Norwalk?
So this was Stanford Hospital. The previous hospital that was 10 years ago serving this crap was Norwalk Hospital.
Yeah.
I think all they're caring about is the bottom line. This is total sick care, and I'm going to be sending out a petition. So if you don't mind sending it to the petition.
Oh, absolutely. I know I have a lot of people in that community, as you know. Can I tell you a little something? When I approached a hospital system in that area, and I said, let's go sugar-free, right? And I talked to the dietitians. I said, what's the chances we can create a low-carb diet option for diabetics? What's the chances we can do what Mark Cucuzella did in West Virginia and go sugar-free as an institution? And they said, there's no way. We have contracts with Coca-Cola, Pepsi that we cannot renege on, and we can't do it. So even though it's clear, we all know the benefits, to tackle this as an institution will require awareness. Can I work with you on that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's hold a PR conference. Let's do it in front.
We'll just put a link on here and all that too. Yeah.
And I would love to do that with you. I think it's a great way for us to kind of, work together to kind of make change happen in our industry. And I'm sure Nina Teicholz will be happy to help us with that too. So
yes,
I'm sorry your mom's going through that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, she knew better. She just kept putting things away. She ended up doing a lot of fasting, which, as you know, is the most healing thing that we humans do. Animals in the wild stop eating when they're sick. We should do it too. And if you have a compromised digestive system and it's inflamed, don't eat. Don't eat. It's just definitely don't eat this nonsense.
Yeah, especially diverticulitis. Usually we give the bowel a little break, and pancreatitis also, gastroenteritis. We usually try to give the bowel a little break, and I like to keep the bowels nice and soft. This is not medical advice, but I usually give magnesium just to keep the bowels nice and soft. I don't know, Brian. Of course, antibiotics are the mainstay treatment for diverticulitis.
Of course.
But
she was also treated as a cardiac patient, so the only thing they cared about was salt intake.
Oh, jeez.
Just to throw this a little curve too in this diverticulitis. One of my patients, she was thin her entire life, law enforcement, very fit, active, healthy, and all of a sudden she's obese, gained 80 pounds somehow. And I said, "What happened? Like, did you go through a divorce, stress? What happened?" And she said, "No, all I had was I had a really bad, diverticulitis flare, and they put me on antibiotics for a month. And after that, I gained weight. I was like, wow, that is really something." And so,
her gut microbiome.
Her gut microbiome. And, I actually gave a talk in Utah about gut microbiome. It was part of it was gut microbiome. And one of our big leaders pulled me aside and said, "You can't talk about that. You have to talk about the science." I was like, there's a lot of science. I'm looking at the science. And it's pretty interesting how we kind of just don't want to look at that. We just and you think about the effects of that kind of food on your gut microbiome when you're in the hospital and you're sick and you're getting antibiotics and all that. It's like, it doesn't help you out the situation. So maybe fasting and, just allowing your gut to heal a little bit when you're trying to heal your gut anyways, and not just keep hammering it with a bunch of processed food.
100%. 100%. Yeah. That's not feeding anything good in your gut microbiome. So
I'm surprised they gave her food, with diverticulitis. So diverticulitis, just so, can we give our readers our listeners a little backstory on diverticulitis? Indigenous people generally don't have diverticulitis. Diverticulitis is basically out pockets of the colon. Somehow the colon wall gets weakened and you get these out pouches that can become infected. So those out pouches are called diverticula. If you have a lot of them, it's called diverticulosis. And if that becomes infected, you get diverticulitis. Now, in indigenous populations, kind of tribal populations, sometimes it occurs on the right side of the colon, but it's rare. The minute you take those people and you put them in any modern society, you take people from rural China, move them into the city, you take people out, growing up on the ranches, the Native Americans, the indigenous people, and then you move them into modern kind of quote unquote, the modern food environment, they develop diverticulitis within about 20 years. So there's something that happens. We don't quite know what it is, but as people transition to a modern, quote unquote, modern diet, whether it's the hyperglycemia and damaging the walls, whether it's the seed oils, whether it's some other additives, components of the diet, we don't really know. The microbiome changes. The wall gets weak and it tends to become inflamed and infected. And once it is infected, right, it kind of like, it's not that the damage is done, but you typically have to treat it with antibiotics and then it may recur. It sounds like with mom, it's been recurring.
Mm-hmm. And it often requires a hospital stay where they may or may not cut out a piece of your colon. And she's been lucky she hasn't had that, but and she was having some wild blood pressure changes, and like I said, it was affecting her heart. So she's in her 70s, so it's like, it was good that she was monitored, but it's very upsetting that in such a great institution with high caliber care and a beautiful setting, this is a brand new hospital. It's like being at a Four Seasons and being served McDonald's.
Yeah, it's really a shame. It's really a shame.
And Troy, have either of you noticed a change in diverticulitis flares on a carnivore diet?
I've had people, well, I'm gonna let Kristina tackle that one first.
Well, I don't think they happen when you clean things up like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I haven't seen any of my carnivore patients like say they're getting a lot of them will say they got better, but I don't know. It's just anecdotal, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious to see if that's an ongoing, like, have you seen diverticulitis in a carnivore trail that you know of? Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, I could think of a couple. So we have a couple people who had diverticulitis. So it's kind of like, you know, the way I view it is what will cause a broken bone and what will prevent, you know, how do you heal a broken bone and how do you prevent a broken bone? You don't wear a cast to prevent a broken bone. You wear a cast to heal a broken bone. So that's kind of the way I view it. I've seen people's bowels get a lot better, particularly with magnesium supplementation, preventing that pressure from constipation and really hard stools. I've seen people's bowels get better on carnivore. I got a couple of people who, you know, they had recurrent diverticulitis beforehand and they have it now. And it typically, if you ask me what is the, you know, the trigger is usually stress. Something lowers their immune system. Their body's fine handling it, but then they get sleep deprived stress and it flares up. So yeah, I do have some people with carnivore who have gotten recurrent symptoms, but anecdotally, it feels like a lot less. You know, anecdotally, it feels like a lot less.
Yeah, because once the damage is, and it's funny because all the studies going back, you may know a different one than I do, but they were saying no, seeds don't cause it. And all my patients come in, they go, I had seeds, and the next day I got the dumb thing every time. And so there's certain things. It's funny because clinical experience may be different than what the literature says, but you know, it's like, do you avoid it? What do you do? You know, sometimes it's just bad luck. Some people have 3 diverticuli and they get diverticulitis all the time. Other people have a whole colon full of diverticuli and they don't get it. They don't get diverticulitis, but they have diverticulosis, which is not the non-infected part. But it's just interesting.
Yeah. Well, I guess according to Dr. Gundry, he'd say like foods with a lot of seeds are high lectin foods and would be problematic.
Yeah, and the lectins can contribute too. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. So the carnivores would be taking that portion of it out of their diet. So
yeah,
hey, we're gonna talk about emotional stuff. Let's talk about emotional
let's
stuff
get
because we're all
that.
emotional people. That's been the topic of the week in my clinic because, you know, I'll tell you, you know, there's different schools of thought and you sit back and you say, gosh, instead of us arguing about who's right and wrong, you know, say, okay, what about for that patient in front of me? Because, you know, some of the things that come up are, you know, whether you have to abstain 100% or whether you can be a moderator. So, you know, we have the Lane Nords of the world say everyone can moderate. No, it's not true. I know people can't moderate. They have one cookie and they're a freak for 3 months. They're eating cookies all day. They can't stop. Other people, if you try to make them abstain and they're moderators, if you say you can never have sourdough bread again, like Rob Sive is on the other side of the coin saying, you know, you can never have sugar again. If you do, you're gonna die basically, because he has an addiction to sugar. So from his perspective, he says, look, once you have it, you're gonna go down that road, right? So, you know, there's different. So for instance, one of my patients who's been very successful, the first time I met with her, she said, hey, is it a deal breaker if I have sourdough bread every once in a while? I own a restaurant and they make sourdough bread and I have it every once in a while. Like, well, why is it first day you're looking at cheating on your plan? And she's like, no, I just know myself. I could eat water all for a month. I could do liquid diet. I've done it all for a month. On day 31, I eat everything because I lose my mind from being too restrictive. So it's kind of figuring out what works for you ultimately, I think. So I would love to hear your perspective on that, Kristina.
I do see that if you tell someone that they're never going to have something again, unless it's, let's say you are diagnosed celiac, you should really never have gluten again. And that's, you know, a hard line to draw in the sand. But if you tell the average person that they can never have something again, the compliance rate to that is not good. Because, you know, in my view, it's 20% is the strategy. What is going to be your right strategy? What's the nuance? How do you want your low carb plan to look? But the 80% is the psychology. So that is pertaining to the compliance, the adherence, the behavior, the habits, and can you have a taste? And ultimately, I think this is me, but I think the goal for the people that I work with is to really foster a positive relationship with food. And what I mean is you want to eat the food, like food you love that also loves you back. And so, yeah, ice cream sundae, cookies, the cake, we may love it, but we know it doesn't love you back because it can cause cancer and diabetes and make you fat and like low energy and brain fog. So having it from time to time intermittently with intentionality is a whole scope of control, and it can be learned. I think it can be learned. It's a practice. It's a muscle you exercise to say like, okay, this is the right time to indulge and sample that and learn to eat mindfully and taste it and savor and go, wow, that's so good. But I've tasted this kind of cake lots of times in my life. I know what a cake tastes like. And then it's about like, who are you sharing it with and where are you? And are you in Rome having a gelato, or are you sitting on the couch binging Netflix and eating Ben and Jerry's? What is the context in which you're enjoying this food?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's intro. We'll let you jump in here too, because I know you have a lot of info. But for her, she said, she said, look, I don't. We met and she crushed it, and I noticed she wasn't really eating those things. I said, how come you're not eating those things? And she said, I look at stuff and I say, it's a choice of saying, is it worth it or not? And a lot of you go, it's not worth it because I feel bad. I get bloated the next day, and you start realizing, you take the romance out of it and realize, I don't feel well when I eat like that. And then it's easy to say, I'm not going to have a donut. I'll be hungry all day. I don't feel well. And like, it's not attractive to me anymore. But so many people are like, oh my gosh, that's what I used to get when I was a good kid in school, that kind of thing. You got these emotional ties that are so powerful.
So powerful. That everything goes back to your childhood, really, because like we all have foods that we know intellectually are bad for us. Like they don't have great ingredients, or not, they're just processed, nasty. And yet they give us that little zing zing. And for me, it was Doritos, because I had positive memory. I grew up abroad. We'd come back to the States. I would stay with my grandparents, and they had all the junk. I mean, everything you could possibly imagine for us. And my brother and I would come in from outside or go on the beach or whatever, and we just pour out the Doritos and put them in a big bowl and go watch Nickelodeon and then lick our fingers. And it was all fun. It was summertime. It was fun. It was
no responsibility.
Yeah, like, so all those associations get made, that meaning, and they're like, oh, this food equals this, and it's relaxation, and then later as an adult, when you're like, oh, I want to relax, I want to have some fun, you think of the food that makes you feel that way, and it's tied to a feeling that you're looking for. And yet, so when you intellectually know something, the feeling is going to override the knowledge. It's going to override the intellect, the logic. So you have to, one of the hacks is to, okay, sit down and brainstorm other things, other activities, other tools that give you those feelings. So if you're bored and you're looking for entertainment or excitement, what are the things that do that for you? If you're sad and you're looking for happy, what makes you happy? If you're looking for relaxation, what would relax you? And that is the beginning of finding something else to do that replaces the food.
Yeah, I think having that compassionate look at yourself and saying, why am I turning to this, right? Why am I turning to this? Do I want it, right? Does it serve all of my interests, right? And why is there a compulsion, or is there a compulsion, right? Or is it my choice, right? If you have everybody wants to blame themselves and think that they have a choice. But if you're compelled to eat, if you feel so compelled to eat where the cravings are on par with an addiction, you need to know that, right? You need to know if you have, deep-seated childhood issues, depression, anxiety, or a disordered relationship to food that's on par with an addiction. If you don't know that, you'll never really know how to handle the way your brain is approaching that substance. So, I wanted to lose weight desperately. I was 350 pounds. And my wife would say, hey, maybe you shouldn't eat that, and whether it's about to bite onto a pizza or whatever it was from my, childhood days, cousin's pizza. I used to like savor it every Wednesday, it was like this big thing. Right. And I would think to myself, like, leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. I'm a grown man, and I thought, I'm just an angry, agitated, oppositionally defiant person. That's what I thought.
I think that too, Tro.
Right? But the reality is, that's the food addiction talking. Because when my wife says, hey, Tro, maybe you shouldn't drive, you got a flat tire, I don't say, leave me alone, I know what I'm doing. I'm a
and that translates over to alcohol, everything, right? So it's like, okay, I had enough. I know. Someone's like, you had enough to drink. No, I can have one more. I know what I'm doing. Leave me alone, right? That's just addiction.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can start to recognize your relationship to food, right, and understand, wait, is my relationship to food off, right? Then you know how to reconcile these thoughts. Maybe it's not a personality trait. Maybe it's not maybe you're not an opposition defiant person. You're just addicted to food, right?
Yeah, it requires radical honesty, real true self-awareness, and also parenting yourself really well. That's part of being a grown-up, right? Is not letting the 3-year-old or the 15-year-old rule the roost and saying, oh, I want to have candy for dinner. I want to have ice cream for dinner. Like that's like a very young part of you that is not talking. And so like we put our kids to bed, we put, children on a schedule and don't feed them candy first. It's like you do that for yourself if you're loving yourself and parenting yourself well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
that was kind of funny. That was my response to the doctor who said, he's a pediatrician. He said that, food has nothing to do with any of these things. I said, so my response to him was, really? So you've never had a patient say, I had a stressful day, I need a drink, or I'm exhausted this morning, I need an extra cup of coffee. You never had a parent say, I took my kids to Disneyland and they ate terrible food all day and then it didn't, and they ran around like crazy. At the end of the day, they're a disaster emotionally, or that grandma takes the kids and hops them up on sugar and then drops them off with mom and you got to take care of this, emotionally fragile child.
You're right. It's the easiest thing to see with little kids and pets. Like you don't feed your pet garbage, or if they have an issue, you change up their diet. And with little kids, yeah, you feed them sugar all day. They're just total disasters, just like you said. So it's the same. In adults, like we wonder why, people are suffering from anxiety and depression or they're just hangry and cranky and can't focus. And it's like, look at your food. What are you putting in the tank?
Yeah, I think, come back. So that's a rational decision, right? So you're talking about the rational brain, right? Which is, what does my body need for fuel? What is my relationship to food? Am I letting the little infant in my brain take over, which I often do on Twitter. I let that part of my brain take over. But, I think these are so deeply emotional issues. And even myself, I remember, I didn't understand the degree of manipulation of those cravings.
Mm-hmm.
I was 350 pounds. I wanted to lose weight. I'd eat my kids' leftovers and say we shouldn't waste food, right? Like how manipulated is my mind, right? Like it's true, we shouldn't waste food, right? That's true. There's starving kids in Armenia and all, Brian goes and sees those starving kids every year, twice a year. He does missions, right? So, and he dresses up as a clown too, by the way. So if you didn't know that.
No, I just look like a clown. I had clowns with me, man. They're the best. I love my clowns in Guatemala, but maybe it's once a year, not twice a year. Don't exaggerate.
Yeah, great guys. So, but look, bottom line is that logic is being manipulated, right? And what's manipulating that? Right? I'm not eating because of starving kids in Guatemala, right? And I'm not actually opposition defiant, but the food, there's a disordered relationship to that food. And without exploring those emotions and going through those emotions with somebody like you and teasing it out, a lot of times our patients don't know, they're like, why did I fail again and again?
Well, human beings, we're all really simple in that we will only make changes in our behavior or our life when there's pain. So like we're pleasure seekers and we're pain avoiders. That's a commonality between all humans. And so how do we make those shifts pleasurable? Because if there's a higher degree of association to, say, a cookie being the pleasure, as opposed to it's causing you a lot of pain, like get connected to the pain. alcohol is an easy thing. Like for one person A, they have a couple drinks, maybe they go off to college, they get drunk, they throw up all night, they learn to regulate the behavior, like, hey, this doesn't feel good, and so I'm going to dial this back. And then person B, it like has all the same stuff. They feel sick, but they make this association. Wow, that was the best night ever. Let's do it again. And they do it again and again. And it becomes out of control. And it's like, how much pain in that person's life do they have to experience? Do they have to like lose job, lose family, like hit the rock bottom where it's so much pain it's caused it? Now, finally, they get with like, oh, this is a huge problem in my life. And for some people, it's like, they can gain 5 pounds and that's enough pain. They like regulate their behavior. And some people, yeah, they have to go to 350 and they can't move and they can't get on a plane. And yep. And it's like, how much pain do you want to experience? Do you want to have the diagnosis to like cause you to shift? Or is it massive discomfort in your body? What kind of pain are you going to get connected to that's going to make this worth the shift? So that you can start associating your new changes, your new body, your new fit to pleasure.
You know, can I disagree with you about one thing?
What?
You said it's about pain. Want to know what did it for me? Well, maybe it's pain. It was ego. It was ego. My wife was like, "You're a smart doctor. Go figure this out." You know, that's
pain. That was, she was hitting a pain point.
Maybe that was my pain. Yeah.
But then you have to go through the pain to get to where you want to be, right? That's part of it, giving up certain things. And you know, I've had some patients with really interesting story, or one was a glycogen storage disease problem. So we had to figure out, how do we transition you from running on sugar to running on fat, basically. And it was a transition. It was hard because he kept going back because he felt so bad. It's like coming off drugs. If you feel, when you come off cocaine, you downregulate all the pleasure receptors. So for a year you feel terrible, and so they go, oh, I use cocaine, I feel better. And so they associate that. And it's funny when we're talking about this, because I have one friend who, you say vodka and he goes, oh no, nuh-uh. He got sick one time on it. And another one, my other friend had tequila too much one night. He goes, oh no, I smell like, no, I don't like, they don't have anything to do with it. So sometimes that associating, saying, gosh, when I eat like that, here's how I feel. Like people who are inflamed all the time, they say, I really enjoyed eating that stuff, but man, for a week my knees hurt. It wasn't worth it. So once you make that switch in your brain that it's not worth it, you know, it's not worth the pain you're going to feel. Like if you're allergic to peanuts, you don't say, I love peanuts so much, I'm just going to take, you know, prednisone and then eat my peanuts. You just say, okay, I just don't do that. So, you know, we've had people on that are really strict, you know, seizure salad comes to mind. And I said, do you ever cheat? And she said, no, it's not worth it to have a seizure and lose my license and all those things that can happen. It's working. I'm not changing it. But diabetics don't seem to think that way. It's a little different, you know, unless you're a newly diagnosed diabetic, you're like, I don't want to go on all these meds, you know? So, you know, it's really that motivation factor of saying, okay, I'm going to go for a walk, even though I hate walking or whatever it is. And then the other mindset thing that I love that you said, because I see this a lot, where some people are so focused on what they can't have that they don't enjoy the ride. And other people are like, you mean I can have steak and I can have salmon, I can eat vegetables, and like, oh my gosh, this is like the best news I've ever had. Like, I don't have to eat all the other stuff. I don't even like it. I'm eating it because I thought it was healthy. And then once they get freed of that, they enjoy the journey rather than, it's like going for a hike and hating every step you're taking. You go, okay, let's just look back and see how far we came and, you know, enjoy the journey and not just look at the end.
Can I tell you a story? I think the poison is in the dose. So when I first started my ketogenic journey, I was training for triathlon, and the training really stunk for like 4 months. I mean, the exercise was brutal. I felt really out of gas. I really wasn't making energy well, but conversely, I was feeling like what I call keto high, like my brain, I felt like in such a good mood all the time. I was happy, like really, really happy. And of course, you know, I was reaping the benefits of the weight loss. And it was probably 7-8 months in, and my triathlon coach was totally against my keto plan, totally against it. He said, you know, this is not sustainable. You need carbohydrates. You're gonna bonk in this final race of the year. I was doing a longer distance race, and I'm not some podium, you know, elite triathlete. So don't misunderstand. I just was wanting to finish. And this guy, like, he got under my skin so much with it that I acquiesced, I caved, and I decided to carb up, but like really carb up the whole week before. And so what that looked like was I was eating bread and pasta and all the things I hadn't eaten in months, which I love. Like, I love those foods. I mean, I grew up in Italy. Like, I love pasta. I was totally addicted to pasta. And so the thing that I experienced, though, was massive IBS. I had diarrhea going into this race. I thought, oh boy, and I'd never had like that kind of severe IBS before, but it was really noticeable. And I knew it was the dietary changes. And the problem, so I knew intellectually, this is bad this does not work for me. This is terrible. But what happened was I had so re-addicted myself to the bread and the like all that starch. That's all I wanted to eat after the race. So it took like a month instead of, oh yes, I'm going to get right back on my keto plan. Nope. It took a month, maybe even like 6 weeks. It was such a struggle to get back in my groove. And I know that people struggle with that. They go on and off their keto plan, and so ultimately, I don't think it's like, oh, you can never have the bowl of pasta, but if you start doing that every single day, you're going to get in trouble. You are going to get re-addicted to those.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think that's the problem is I have like one of my patients, she's sweet as can be, but every week she goes, yeah, I blew it again. We went out, we had drinks, and then I had this, and then next week, oh yeah, I blew it. You're gonna be mad at me. I blew it again. I blew it, and it's like every week, and you go, gosh, dang it, how do I help you? Because you're maybe the abstinent person. Like you have to abstain, and so I have some people on the other spectrum that I'm thinking, oh, they're so hardcore that they're gonna burn out. It's gonna be too hard. Like what my carnivore lady, and I said, is it restricted? And she said, no, I feel great. My mood's great. And I said, why are you so restricted? She said. She's a doc, and I was driving down the freeway, eating low carb ice cream out of the half gallon, holding the steering wheel with my knees, and I have low carb snacks all next to me on the chair. This whole drive, she like binged on everything, and she realized like I'm addicted. I just have to cut this. I can't have it anymore because if I do, so that's the kind of that slippery slope of people who say, oh, low carb's easy. Just have low carb brownies and cookies and donuts and all this stuff all day long. And then you won't crave the old foods, but then they go back to craving the real thing again. And so for some people, it's just cutting it all out. And other people saying, okay, if every once in a while I can have my, like, okay, I'll do a quick disclaimer. I had Rosette's pizza for 4th of July. My wife made Rosette's, and we made the rest of our family the regular crust, right? So, and we enjoyed it. We had a blast. But, having that, so do you say, okay, I had this now, then I'm going to eat pizza for the rest of the week, right? If you could have that one and then move on with your life, you're all good, right?
That's what I favor, that approach. Like, do that, because restricting forever, you can start to go down that like eating disorder path.
Look,
That's
the biggest thing is deprivation, right? Long term, we have to fight deprivation. Long term, we have to fight food addiction, right? So we have these two competing avenues, right? So now, can I just, I'm going to add a little thing about, let's share a story about myself. I'm 7 years low carb, 7 years. Okay. I won't ever go back, unless my health really deteriorates somehow, but it hasn't. And I found myself, my wife actually pointed out to me, she's like, Tro, after dinner, you keep going to the nut drawer. We have a drawer in the island filled with a bunch of nuts, all low carb, all keto, all plant-based, whatever, healthy. And we got some dark chocolate there too. Low carb, very low carb. Also vegan, so if you pay, like it's cacao and sweetener. So I didn't notice after every dinner I'm going. And so I'm like, let me just see how much of this is the conditioning. Like you brought up, you said 6 weeks it took you to let go of the bread, right? So I just moved it. We have it in that drawer because so the kids can go and snacks, but they're like over the nuts now. So I moved it to the pantry. Guess, Brian, how long I went and opened that drawer? Guess how long?
Oh yeah, that's interesting, man.
Guess how long? After dinner. Guess how long I the next day, what do you think happened? Of course I went to the drawer.
You went to the drawer and looked like, oh, there's nothing there. And then yeah.
Guess how long I kept doing that?
I would say 2 weeks.
3 weeks.
Wow, man. Yeah.
3 weeks, look in the drawer completely. And this is This is not processed food. It's nuts. It's dark chocolate, minimally processed, right? Dark chocolate, which is like a little sweetener. So the point is that this is both plant-based and keto, and I'm addicted to it, right? And that's totally fine. So anyway, I cut it out, but that conditioning is very powerful.
It's the behavior, the habit formation. But you know, it's a myth that a habit takes 21 days or 90 days. It can happen in a nanosecond. It's just what happens is we have this sort of like hit of, there's that reward, that pleasure, that feeling is what, ooh, that's what we're addicted to.
Yeah, and that's interesting how
habit in a day.
Well, I think I'm addicted to the sweet, carb, and fat. You know, that's personally what I think I'm addicted to. You know, and the fact that I'm conditioned to that reward. I mean, it's expected, right? Any other animal, if it found a pocket of food, it would want to remember it. So, but can we be aware of this, that a lot of our eating could be subconscious, right? And it has nothing to do with almost anything other than conditioning. And, you know, if that one low carb pizza sparks something, you got to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can be like, if you could treat it like a spare tire, that is the ideal. Like, you just use it when you need it, and then you go back to your tire and get it fixed real quick.
Yeah, you just want to get a flat tire every day, right? Every week, every weekend, every night. You know, so people have more flat tires than other people, and that's results in more spare tires too. But you know, I think it's a you know, it's one of those darn things. Like, I'm the same way, Turo. Like like in June when everything was crazy, I'd be with people and they're all snacking on chips. And I go, oh, I'll just have nuts. Right. And it adds up, and you go, oh, have a glass of wine here and some nuts there, and it adds up very quickly. So it's kind of being cognizant of those things too.
It's very Mediterranean, keto,
yeah, Mediterranean, yeah.
You know, it doesn't,
vegan.
It's all healthy, but like, quote unquote, I'm putting, right? But you know, the dose is in the you know, the poison is in the dose, right? And if you're in control, that's different, right? If it's helping you come off of cocaine and, you know, heroin injections, that's great. You know, the cup of wine is fine, right? But if it's replacing water, right, I'm not sure that that's healthy. Right. You know, so I'm with you, Brian.
Yeah, and it's great, you know, and just some great people out there too. You know, I just interviewed Ken Berry for my other podcast, and you know, we had a great discussion. But he was saying, and I like it. He said, basically, if you get emotionally charged when someone talks about your diet, then you're no longer a scientist, right? Meaning that, like, you shouldn't have emotion. It either is what it is or it's not. You know, either you're right or you're wrong, and not say, I'm going to defend this till I die. Like you said, if I start having health consequences, I'll change what I'm doing. You have to have that mindset, because if you're feeling terrible and you say, oh, I'm going to keep doing this and I feel terrible, and you're getting worse, you know, with whatever your disease process is, you know, it's like taking the same antibiotics over and over again. It's not working. You don't keep doing that. You change it to a different one.
Speaking of Ken Berry's program, he's got the BBB&E program, the bacon, butter, beef, and eggs. And someone came to me, because I know that works great for a bunch of people, and she said, this isn't working. Like, it's not working. This is all I'm eating. This is not working. And we ran her genetics, and she should not be eating that. She's got all the saturated fat issues. She gets the blood glucose spike with red meat. She needs to be eating lots of fish. She needs to be eating vegetables. Like, talk about doing it more Mediterranean style, lean poultry. And now things are moving along. So
how do we do the genetic testing?
Yeah, can you help educate us? Saliva
swab. It's a $300 test. It's I use Nutrition Genome. So that's if, you know, if any of your listeners are stuck and they're doing keto in a particular way and they're like kind of stalled out, and they're like, I need it nuanced a bit.
Yeah, and can you tell me some of the things you've learned with your experience with that? Because we're learning from you. So, you know, I know you've been delving into this a lot lately. Is there any, you know, kind of tips or just guide people on, you know, some of the things that you found, you know, with your use of Nutrition Genome?
So, you know, the genetics comes in, I see sort of three major buckets. You've got like ancestry genetics. You can run a 23andMe or ancestry.com. Then there's the genetics that pertains to major diseases, and like it's like there are scientists, really brilliant scientists out there working to treat those diseases, and no type of eating plan is going to address that disease, right? So what we're talking about is genes that are malleable. They're low penetrance genes, they're low impact, but when you look at them in certain pathways, and sort of family groups, they can tell a story for you. And 99.9% of us are the same, but 0.1 differences actually equal 3 to 4 million variations in genes. And so we're talking about lots of subtle differences between individuals, and this can kind of go back to even like addiction and pathways with neurotransmitters that also get looked at, and especially with mental health, that's like a whole profile inside the report I look at. Just given that anxiety and depression are so prevalent, people are on so many different medications, and could that be, could you address that nutrition? Yes, you can. You can address that nutritionally and with the right supplementation and feel a whole lot better. Example, I'm injury prone. And we get two people doing the same exercise plan that they download offline. It's like, okay, do this, like you looked ripped like the person that wrote the thing. Well, you may not be predisposed to build all that muscle, and you may be injury prone. So if you don't take, maybe don't supplement with the collagen, or don't take the rest days, you might hurt yourself doing that plan. And I've been there. And so that sort of that potential of who you are is written right there in those gene SNPs, and they they can be manipulated, they can be acted upon. So you can dial up certain nutrients, like you say, if someone has a predisposition to a diverticulitis, for example, and they would benefit from lots of magnesium. Looking at those gene SNPs can really start to tell a story when you correlate it back to life. Like you don't look at a report and go, oh, you're a piece of paper. You got to actually talk to a human and like find out how they're living and what they do. And if you can put it together with other labs and blood work and maybe a CGM, and
sounds like really personalized, holistic nutrition, advice. And this is really the way I think our whole field has to go.
Yeah, and you look at, some people can have more carbs than others. Some people need a higher fat ketogenic. Some people do well on, because I see people do well on all different things. You go, I wonder why for them it works. So I do the same thing. It's terrible for me. So you try to figure out what works for you ultimately, and that may be a good, at least give us a general guideline of saying, oh, okay, let's start cutting some of these type of foods out. It doesn't look like you do well with them.
It's easy. It's kind of easy to think about when we think about pets, like pet food. So there's so many different kinds of breeds of dogs, right? And some have like breathing issues, some have skin issues, and you look at the pet food, and some is grain free, and some is this, and some is that, some is raw, some cooked, and different dogs do well on different things. And it's similar. It really is similar. You're right. Like some people can have more plants, some people can't. Some they should be eating certain types of meat, some nuts, more of this oil, some more saturated fat. It is unique. And Tro, I remember last time we talked, you mentioned the Inuit and ketosis. So the Inuit are the only population that cannot get into ketosis because they have a deletion. I've since got this memorized, a deletion on CPT1A. That's sort of, those are the numbers and letters.
Very similar to
all it is spelling changes with DNA and spelling changes.
Yeah.
And they have an actual deletion on the ability to be in ketosis. Otherwise they would have gotten too skinny because they're on a ketogenic diet all the time.
Wow.
Yeah, they're very similar to bears. Bears often, they're just on the edge of ketosis. Like basically 0.1, not never 0.5. Yeah, the Inuit, I know a big portion of them have that mutation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. All this stuff is so
Would that
fast.
show up in the nutrition genome?
The CPT1A,
Yeah.
I don't, I haven't seen it in that report because
Yeah.
I think you would have to be in that population it would be probably better to do a 23andMe to get your ancestry and then look for that particular gene SNP if you were really curious about that, but you wouldn't have that if you weren't of that descendancy. So what it means to me is that everyone else in the world has the ability to get into ketosis, but when people have problems with their PPAR, so it's PPAR, they have a harder time with fat oxidation, and they need a lot of L-carnitine to help because they'll feel like crap on keto. You really dial down those carbs and they can't make ATP. They can't make the energy. So it's like trying to start the car and it just doesn't go. So they don't feel good fasting. They don't feel good on keto. And so if you have variants there, you could do a slightly higher, slightly more carbs, more plants, and but just keep it
and supplement with L-carnitine.
And high supplementation of L-carnitine. Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Because I've had that. I've come across that. So it's so great when you kind of say the exception to the rule. What do you do when there's an exception to the rule? Most people are going to benefit. You cut out processed foods, right?
Yeah, it's an exception. All those things that people argue about, so dairy, the issue with dairy is that the ability to tolerate it is an adaptation.
Yeah, so I think it's a lot of it as you change your diet, as you bring down your insulin level. There's so many factors involved that we look at, and and one thing I just wanted to revisit back because we just had a small group talking about this. We were talking about abstinence versus you have to be an abstainer versus moderator, and it's funny because everyone in the group said I can moderate in certain foods, but I have to abstain in others. So it's not just all or none. So there's certain things you say, as a matter of fact, one of my patients, Tro, was giving me a bad time. She said, you and Tro keep saying that you can't binge on broccoli. I will binge on broccoli. I'm like, okay, you're the one person who binges on broccoli.
Binge on broccoli. I could definitely binge on broccoli.
Oh, maybe it was just me who said that.
Yeah.
But it's unlikely. You don't go home and go all day. You go, oh, I'm going to go home and broccoli all night.
I can do it.
I can only do it if it's got lots of, olive oil, maybe some Parmesan cheese on it.
Yeah. And if it's a hyper palatable, what Tro's talking about.
Really hyper palatable broccoli, yeah. I can absolutely.
Yeah, we could pretty much binge on anything that's hyper palatable. That's really good, but just plain broccoli off the, just biting it, less likely, unless you're dipping in something that you really like or something like that. So yeah, it's really but it is just kind of figuring out, okay, what is my kryptonite and what is it? Am I an abstain? When you learn that for yourself, I think it makes sense. When you say, okay, if I have one, pecan, I can't stop or whatever it is, and so I think it's just kind of figuring it out. And like you said, Tro, a lot of it's so subconscious, you don't even think about it. You'll go there, grab nuts, and you don't think about it. It's just a habit. You just do it, or you'll say, "Oh, we're done with dinner, dessert now," and that's all so entrenched in us that it's just hard that you have to really be thinking about it.
I wish that those people that really do struggle with that, they get with someone who can hold their hand through the process and really invest in that kind of support, because it's meaningful, it's helpful. Don't go it alone. You don't need to, walk that journey alone. It's really hard to just read a book or, try to do some online program without actual community and, real people holding your hand.
Oh, can I tell you, it is so critical, right? In alcohol addiction, you go to AA, you get a sponsor. Even your car, it has a jack, it has a spare tire, and it has a tow service, right? You need that minimum level of help when it comes to your relationship with food. and I'm 100% in agreement with you. You need a community, and you need a, an outside party that's not judging you, is there to help you. When you call the AAA, they don't say, hey, Kristina, you're a terrible driver. That's why you got a flat tire. You just need to put more points of air than you let out, right? They don't say that, right? And so you need to find a team that has the same compassion and non-judgment. Guys, I'm so inspired by all of you. Kristina, I cannot wait for Keto Symposium. Hopefully we can convince Brian to come.
Yeah.
He's never been, he's got to come visit me, and I will cook him as many low-carb pizzas as you want. You can stay with me, Brian. You and your wife definitely have a bed. And I can't wait. This Keto Symposium is going to be great.
Yeah, I think to your point, people ask me all the time, they're like, why are you putting on this conference? And it's like, it originated with this idea that it would be great for my own clients to hear from someone other than me, that just, it would be okay. Cause sometimes we hear things differently from other people, and it helps you on the journey and on the path for inspiration and knowledge. And I think it is so important for community to get together and also to learn from each other. And so that's where kind of the nugget started. But it's so if you're listening to this and you are struggling to do your keto and do your low carb or carnivore or whatever it is that you're up to, I think going to a conference and being around that kind of support will help give you momentum, put you back in the game, give you some new tools, ideas, inspiration, and learn, be a lifelong learner. And at least if you're not going to invest in a coach or program, go invest in the time in a weekend to immerse yourself. Just go immerse and get some momentum back.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the importance of community, when I go to the low carb meetings, is so refreshing. You hear people's stories and testimonies, and what they're doing, what they're struggling with, and having people like Ken Berry or whoever that you can bounce ideas off, what works for you, what's not working, and having doctors and health professionals all in one place to interact and hear what they have to say and what works and what doesn't work. And it's so good because we all learn from each other. A lot of times Tro and I go and we learn from other people, go, wow, that's really interesting. Like, what works for you, that's kind of cool. Maybe I could use that for my next patient. If you're vegan, how do we help you? If you're vegetarian, how do we help you with all those other things and make it as, not everyone has to drink the same Kool-Aid all the time. We can have some diversity within the group,
Yes, 100%, 100%. So my final plug is get your tickets, come to Keto Symposium, see you in New York City.
How do they get tickets?
Just go visit the website, www.ketosymposium.com. You can find us on Instagram at Keto Symposium. The tickets are being sold through Eventbrite. You can search it there too.
Maybe next year, what we could do, and this is something I've worked on, is we can use the SMHP, the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, to give CME. So hopefully this year goes really well, and next year we can connect and make this a SMHP, certified CME AMAPR1 event. So that'll be interesting. Guys, thank you so much, Brian. Always a pleasure. Kristina.
Yeah, great to be back.
Thanks for having me on again.
Kristina, thanks for joining us again.